Hello there, Ívar by Ívar's Fly Workshop. Today we are going to tie a relic, which is one of the Siggi Páls flies of Sigurður Pálsson. He just actually passed this year, and it's like an honor to tie one of his absolutely best flies. This fly is called Flæðarmús, and the Flæðarmús is probably one of Siggi's like a trademark fly. It's been around, and it's a really strong fly when it comes to fishing for sea trout. So we'll start by attaching the thread to the shank of the hook. We are using black thread number 8, and for the tail of the fly we are using a black and blue squirrel. Actually it should be only blue, but we use a black-blue squirrel in this case. And that's the tail, and it's a pretty complicated fly. It's like we say, it's not like an easy beginner's fly to start with, because it's you have to watch out with the wing and stuff. There are lots of materials in the fly. So we just attach the tail and keep this material just as an underbody and get it tied down like this. I'll trim off the ends of it, both sides. And yeah, this video is as well made for a friend of mine who I used to work with, Orri. He was begging about, please do the Flæðarmús, and I was like, yeah, Orri, I will do the Flæðarmús for you, of course. Of course you do that for your friends. This fly is really strong when it comes to sea trout fishing. It's probably one of the best we have in Iceland. Next step in the fly is this small hackle which we place right just in the front of the tail. That's an ostrich feather, a black ostrich feather, just like this tiny mini hackle on a salmon fly, like those traditional salmon flies. So there is, like we say, there is pretty much put into the fly. We do like 4 or 5 wraps to get the hackle like this, so it's like so you can at least see it, and then we lock it in place, lock the feather in place, and finish it off like this. Then we snip off the end. And the next step is the body of the fly, and the body is made out of 2 materials. It's this silver chenille, which we have, and then there is a red wool in front of that, so it's like 50-50 or half and half about. So I usually do it like this. I like pinch off the beginning and leave the chenille like this, just naked in the front, and then tune down exactly where I want it to be before we start to turn it around the fly. Then we go with the thread to about the middle of the hook shank where we want to stop the chenille. It's about there. Then we wrap this tightly around the shank and make sure it's like very well visible. And the characteristics of this fly is, when you will see that when it's finished, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And there is no surprise that the fish is like really wanting to gulp them. Then we snip off the end of the silver chenille. And now it's the red wool we place on, but with the red wool, that is supposed to be wrapped or there is a rib on it, and that's an oval gold, like a medium-sized oval gold. And we wrap that and secure it down like this. But a little story with the Flæðarmús before we put the wool on. This creature there, this is Flæðarmús. But the Flæðarmús itself is as well known from the Icelandic folklores, which is a creature which you Yeah, lived in the ocean, and if you collected it, you could feed it and send it back to the ocean, and it should give you, it should drag money or some valuables back to you. So we have lots of funny, good folklores here in Iceland, and the original name of the Flæðarmús is coming from there. So we just attach the wool to the body of the fly, and then we'll wrap the wool around. It's just like as you see, it's like a shiny red, beautiful wool. And then we'll just wrap that until we're left with thread. And one thing which you have to be aware of is that you must leave place like those 3 or 4 millimeters, like 3 millimeters close to the head. As you see what I'm doing, it's like, it's here. I'm not going all the way in front because it's so important to leave space there for the wing, because the wing is, I would say, complicated. And when you tie this, if you're a beginner and you tie this fly, you may end up with a really bulky head or a funny wing, because there is like, often people mess this around by not leaving space on the head or for the head. So then we will wrap the gold around, and yeah, I wasn't like satisfied with that, so I'll go back and keep the gap a little bit wider, just like this. And we'll just lock the gold tinsel down with a few wraps, trim off the end, and then it comes to the beard of the fly, or it's not like we'll not do a hackle on there, but it's going to be like a beard. And for that we are using white bucktail, and we have to measure that out. It's really thin bucktail, I found, and it's really nice to have it thin. We have to measure it out so it's about getting to the barb of the hook or so, the end of the beard, something like that. And just to make it easier, I'll turn the vise 180 degrees and attach it down like so. Then we will leave it like this, and then we have silver tinsel, like 3 or 4 strands of silver tinsel. That's what comes with the beard of the fly. It gives it like a pretty good look, and it's important with this to not to put too many of those silver tinsels. Just nip them off there. They're like super thin and you can't barely see them, but it gives a look on the fly. Then we turn the vise back to the original position, and then the wing is the next step, and the wing is the most complicated stuff on the fly, or the part. So we will use a red bucktail. Actually, a red squirrel will do as well. And I believe it's in some cases even easier to work with a squirrel hair than the bucktail. So I prefer to do this with a bucktail just to keep the fur in place and in one place, to place like a little part of varnish, like a little drop of varnish on the part of the hair which I'm attaching to the head, and that's gonna hold it in place like this. Just a few tight wraps like this, and that's how the head will be built up on the fly. Next step is that we take 2 red rooster or cock feathers, and they come kind of on each side of the bucktail wing. And you have to place the feathers like in a correct place. You have to make sure that the stems of the feathers are even, and we'll trim off the stems there. You have to measure it like first on the shank of the hook and kind of figure out how long you want it to be. And then actually I use this trick. I use my hackle pliers just to like softly and gently squeeze it together. If you do it with your fingernails, it's okay to do that as well, but if you do it with them, it's more risk of breaking the stems. Then comes the wing. Down it goes. It's a beautiful wing, isn't it? It is. It's a brilliant fly. Then we trim off the end of the stems of the feather. And next step is the most challenging one on the fly, because there are other two feathers coming on. There are two grizzly feathers, and those are supposed to be put on each side. So the shinier part of the feather should be like standing out on each side of the fly. If you put it on top, it's not going to be as cool as it should be. It's like the best way to work this out is to place just one feather at a time in its place. And before we do that, you have to kind of measure out and figure out the length that you will prefer. Those feathers, it's okay to keep the grizzlies like slightly longer than the red feathers on the wing. And they are supposed to go like this, like on each side of the wing. And to do that simultaneously is almost impossible. It is possible, but it's better, as you see, how I started didn't work out too well. So one feather at a time is, it's much better to do it like that. And it goes on like this. You can kind of tune in the wing, just 3-4 tight wraps, keeps it in place. Then you'll do exactly the same thing with the feather on my side of the fly. Make sure it's as even as possible, and secure that down, and then we'll trim off the stems of the feather. I absolutely love this fly. It's like I said, quite complicated tie. It's, like I said, maybe not for beginners, but of course beginners can try out. I definitely recommend that. The pattern of the fly is just in the description below the video on the channel. And then we start to build up the head of the fly. The fly is almost ready, but there are eyes on this fly which we paint on, and those eyes are red eyes with yellow spots in them. And it's okay to build up like a little bulky head on it, so you have some space for the eyes. And now the whip finishing process is about to begin. We'll do the whip finishing job, and since the head is that bulky, you can kind of leave the knot in the gap there. It's really neat. You can kind of hide the knot there. It's really comes in really handy when you have a big head of the fly to just hide the knot in the gap. Nobody will notice. Then we'll snip off the thread, and the fly is almost solo. And as you see, it's a beautiful tying, and it's a brilliant design by Siggi. Salute to Siggi. It's a brilliant fly. Then we'll put, before we paint the eyes on, we'll put on varnish. For this, actually, I prefer to use UV resin. I'm using Bone Dry, Solaris Bone Dry for this. There are some other resins out there, Golf and some other stuff which are supposed to be really good as well, but I think I will stick with the Bone Dry. It's like love at first sight kind of thing. Then we'll just do the head cement job like this. Then we will sap the glue with our UV torch, just like this, and make sure that it gets enough time for the light, and turn the fly around a few times. Now it's just like sapped and it's in place. So next step is to paint on the eyes. So we take a red varnish. I'm using a vineyard varnish here. I'm using a toothpick, as you see, to place on the eyes, just like this. You must not put more than this. This is like, this should not be more than this. And for the other side of the fly, as you can see, you'll just do the same. Use your elbows, place them on the table to get stability. Use your other hand to get stability, and it's going to be just fine, and it's going to be in place. Doing it with just free hand, that's it's going to end up with some messed up eyes, I believe. So then the yellow spot, to make the stone in the eye, I'll use the same method for stability and stuff. And that yellow spot should be smaller than the actual eye, just like this. Tiny touch of a yellow spot. Gently touch. It's yeah, like a work of a small surgery or something which you're performing. But I have fortunately good hands and they're not too shaky, so it's kind of, I'm not saying easy for me, but I've done it lots of times to paint on the eyes of the fly. And to make the eyes secure, I will go, when they are dry, just go give it another coat of UV glue, so it's definitely going to stay in place. Just like this, magic touch of the eyeball. Absolutely brilliant. So here the fly is ready, Flæðarmús. I hope you liked the video. You can, like we say, like, subscribe and share the video. And I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks for watching.